In the grimdark future of Warhammer 40K, war is an everyday thing. But that doesn't mean that the horrors don't affect the Space Marines like they would humanity. Here we have an excerpt from the novel Cybernetica, where we have a Raven Guard falling into post-traumatic stress disorder after fighting against an infamous Xeno race. So without further ado, let's dive into this Raven Guard lore. The horror was over almost before it had begun. Urgent, yet impersonal. Cold, yet savage. Metal shells clashed like ancient plaint, drowning out the brief thunder of gunfire. The legionaries pushed the monstrosities back with their boarding pavises. They drilled the vanguard creatures with rounds from bolters nestled in their shield muzzle rests, but the alien plague was persistent. As empty bolt guns clattered to the floor with battered shields, the thud of fire was replaced by the shrill chug of chainswords and the screech of monomolecular teeth through metallic chitin. It was an excruciating noise. The Raven Guard created a nimbus of swift death about them, with severed alien appendages dancing throughout the air, and whiplashes of ichor splattering the ground like unrefined oil. Skill and determination could not stand long against the impossible numbers of the Xeno swarm. Smaller specimens leapt through the busy swordwork and slaughtered, scuttling up power-armored limbs to chomp and chew horribly with immature mandibles. The stiletto legs of the mature creatures skewered and pinned the legionnaires. Digital blades thrashed forth, slicing, slashing, and stabbing. The Raven Guard came apart in the furious, relentless horror of the Xenos attack. Black-armored forms slipped and slid about in pools of their own blood, kicking and reaching out with limbs that were no longer their own. Their world became a blur of chitinous frenzy, the hot jag of alien appendages plunging down through their armor carapaces and muscular torsos. Dravian Clade was dreaming. He knew this only after the fact. It was an unusual event for the legionary. He had not dreamed since the killing fields of Farinatus, the very place where he had been mauled in the Xeno carnage, where he had lost both his legs and an arm to the alien swarm. On the Medicae slab, Tech Marine Rhinus and the Legion Apothecaries had taken away his pain. They had replaced phantom limbs with working wonders of plasteel and adamantium, appendage enhancements fit to serve a Space Marine, and in doing so, serve the Emperor once more. He gained a new name from their compliance partners, the Night Lords who had found what was left of him, and the name had stuck, the Carrion. In a Sergio sarcophagus, the young battle brother had learned the calm, disassociated horror of having been flesh and only flesh. The deadliest of enemies made the best teachers. The Carrion knew this. He relearned the lessons that the Xeno abominations had taught him on Farinatus Maximus every time he closed his eyes. A trauma of both body and mind that wormed its way through his psycho-indoctrination and training. A nightmare from which he never truly awoke. A kind of unspeakable fear, not of the enemy, not of death, but of failure. The failure of flesh to achieve the unachievable, and to do what could not be done. Sergeant Dravian Clade, hopeful, optimistic, and a most loyal servant of his Primarch, might have volunteered for this perilous mission, and led the Breacher siege squads to the alien nest, but a dead man had returned, devoid of venture and spark. Gone was his enthusiasm for duty and martial delight. He did not need to look through his eyes to see that he was half of what had been. He was now some monstrous wonder of metal and piston. He returned to his ranks, a pale-faced ghost, a shadow of his former self. The Night Lords joked that Dravian Clade was more carrion bird than Raven now, a scavenger of parts. The name even found currency among his own ranks, where with greater respect and very little admiration, his own battle brothers dubbed him the Carrion, in honor of his agonizing one-armed crawl back through the sanctuary nests to the Night Lord lines. Beyond the other cybernetic modifications, the servants of the Omnissiah had judged his salvaged flesh worthy and had blessed him with oblivion. Concerned at the state of his recovery, Commander Alcanor had consulted the Tech Marine Ryklus on how further he might help his patient. Ryklus settled on the further surgery and augmentation, but by that point, the Carrion cared little what happened to the remainder of his flesh. The incorporation of an automatic shaft, driven like a cogitator spike through his brain, returned to the Space Marine some tranquility of mind. With supplementary sessions of psycho-indoctrination, it all but banished the living nightmare of his survival, driving the horror of the xeno-butchery on foreignness to the back of his mind. Day by day, as his wounded mind and ruined body began to heal, the Carrion allowed himself to believe that he might once again be useful to his legion. The presence of this cogitator spike was why the dream, any dream, was such an unusual occurrence. The integrated hardware that was now one with his brain had long since deemed such neuroactivity to be superfluous to function. Getting up from his slab and standing in the murique Martian sunlight that slipped in through the shutters of his cell, the Carrion willed himself to remember, to call back to the fading fantasy. He had not only dreamed of farness and the horror compliance, but also of the red planet, of the magnificence of Mars. It had seemed almost inevitable that the Carrion would go to Mars, whether it was his personal experience of being one with the machine god, or the changing perspectives of his own legionary brothers. He knew he was no longer a streamlined secret, striking from the shadows. The Raven Guard fought with speed, stealth, and cunning. The Carrion, on the other hand, appeared to have been truly forged in battle. To his brothers, the wondrous workings of his interface limbs were clunky replacements, the very antithesis to their battle mythology. The cogitator informed the Raven Guard that there was a 96.323% that the REM stage brain activity relating to his dreams was resulting from his injuries sustained in the killing fields. After all, the bionic appendages that graced his flesh were a constant reminder to his grievous injuries. The cogitator told him that there could be many possible reasons why he would be dreaming. So here we see that even though Space Marines are psycho-indoctrinated, they have all these gene seed implantations, and they're basically and made for war, they still do suffer from the consequences of this from time and time. Whether it be through some type of gene seed deficiencies, or as we see here, just the horror of losing your limbs and not being able to serve both your chapter and the Emperor, it can be a means to kind of show you that these Space Marines aren't indeed invincible, invulnerable. They still do suffer because at their core, they're still humans. Their transhuman physiology is still human at its core, so they do suffer from these downfalls. But if you guys know any other instances of them suffering from PTSD or any type of battlefield disabilities, let me know in the comments down below. And that's all I got for today. So thanks again for watching, commenting, liking, sharing, and of course for subscribing. And this has been the Silent Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll catch you then. Peace.
Always used to put my freedom first.